Hey everyone, in this video we're just going to be taking a look at the Ecoline brush pens by Royal Talens, and I have the grey set here. So here are the pens. The first thing I want to point out is I don't use watercolours often, so whilst I am going to try and do my best to review these, I admittedly don't know too much about watercolours, so it is the opinion of a novice, let's say. So I think a good place to start would be the actual barrels, the design of the pen, and as you probably already noticed, these are rolling away. So they are perfectly rounded. So they're not like, a Copic marker, a sketch marker where it's slightly oval and it stops them from rolling away. So you can see the actual pen design, nothing wrong with it, nothing too fancy in my opinion. Not something that really bothers me when making a decision. If we take a look at the actual nib, again, I would just say it's a typical brush nib. I've heard that they're quite firm, but we're going to test that shortly. So the lids do fit nicely on the back quite securely, so that's always handy, stops you from losing lids. And one thing I saw someone mention in another video is that you can actually unscrew these. Now the idea is that you can refill them this way, which we'll talk about refills later. But you can see you can also use the back of the nib as a spare nib. So you can reverse this essentially, I guess, when your nib gets worn. I haven't tested this though, I am just going by what someone else told me there. And just make sure you screw that back on tight when you do it. So I'm going to do a little swatch of these colours, or greys, and the paper that I'm going to be using for this is the Ecoline Smooth watercolour paper, hot pressed. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a quick swatch for each pen, and then I'm going to take a brush with a bit of water on, and I'm just going to try from the bottom to blend it out. So you might have noticed with that first one, it didn't seem to blend out with water very well. As I got darker with each grey though, it seemed to blend out easier. So part of me thinks maybe the more colour dye there is, the easier it is to actually fade out. So it's a bit more subtle with the ones that are lightest, a bit more difficult to do. So I've also tried to do these in a bit of a colour or tone order. And what I mean by that is we've got the warm greys along the top, the black and the cool greys. To be honest, this one, I thought it was warm greys. I'm looking at it now thinking maybe it's neutral, because that one doesn't look particularly warm. But I do find it a little bit strange in the grey set just how much colour there is to this brown sepia and this blue colour. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just thought for a set of greys it was a little bit unusual. You can see the black. When I was putting that down I thought it was going on quite well, but now that it's set it looks quite faded, quite pale. And there is a blender pen in this set, but with these being water based I thought that that would basically be water. So I'm not sure the correct way to use this, but I'm going to swatch it on camera anyway, trying to blend it out with this pen instead of using the water. So it kind of does work well, but it leaves quite a lot of streakiness on this paper, and aside from that, I'm not sure if you can see, it actually brought a lot of the paper up. Not to mention that it also dyes the nib quite a bit after only one use. But as I say, this could be me using it completely wrong, so let me know in the comments below if you know the correct way to use this pen. Whilst I've got this page out for swatching, I just wanted to test some of the similar colours to see if they blend together on their own. And then I just added a little bit of water over the top. Just playing around more than anything, just to see if I can figure out the best way of using these and what kind of effects I can actually get. Starting with the darker ones and then fading it out with the lighter ones as I go. Again, it did bring up a fair bit of the page compared to what I was expecting. So with the one on the left, I actually tried to blend it and fade it out using the different shades of pens. Whereas the one on the right, I actually tried to keep them separate and then blend it out fully just using a brush with water on, which didn't really work too well. And finally, I just wanted to test on a non-porous surface if you could actually draw some of the ink onto the surface and then use it like a typical watercolour, dipping your brush in and blending it onto the paper. To be honest, the ink went onto the palette surface quite nicely, quite easily. And it worked quite well to use the paintbrush from that point. It also seemed to give the smoothest blend out of all of them so far. So I realised I didn't actually mention which colours come in this set, so just so you can see them on camera, you've already seen the swatches, but we've got 728, 706, 718, 440, a blender, 700 which is the black. Then in the cool greys we've got 738, 704, 717 and 533. So let's see if I can actually create anything from these whilst we talk about price and a few other things. So this is just something I made up very quickly off the top of my head. I know it's nothing amazing, but I just wanted to get something started for a bit of a demo. And I won't go too much into the process of me actually drawing this because I'll probably upload a different video for that. But I started with pencil for this, and then I used a Sharpie Ultra Fine pen just for the black outline. Now I do actually have a video where I compare quite a lot of different fine liners and inks to see if any of them are waterproof. So I'll put a link to that in the description box below, as it might be helpful to you if you're going to purchase these types of pens. And the piece that I've drawn is, you know, some sort of, let's call it a rock creature, rock dragon, let's say. So you could argue that watercolor pens are not the best choice because I've done quite a hard edge design. You know, if they're edges of rocks and things, they don't need to be blended in so much. But I did still try to blend certain areas. I would like to stress again that I'm not the best with watercolors. So I'm sure a lot of you guys that are good with watercolors can probably point out a lot of things I'm doing wrong. But I'm giving it a go anyway. To be honest, I ended up using these more like I would with alcohol markers, like Copic markers and stuff. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but they were closer to using those types of markers than I was expecting. Now, the reason I actually bought these is there's an artist that I follow called Franz Garces, or Garcias, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, and he released an art book, and in there it's full of his art and tutorials. A lot of his artwork, he just uses a ballpoint pen and then he just fills it in with some greys, and he actually suggests using these Ecoline pens. And his stuff just looks so good that I thought I would give it a go. I actually have a video of a book review for that one, so again I'll put links on screen and in the description box below. Definitely check that out, it's a really good book. And it's pretty cool to see how he uses these pens. So yeah, I took the risk and I bought these without knowing much about them. At the time, I bought them on Amazon for £17.50. That's in the UK. That's a set of 10 pens. I actually just looked before I recorded this though, and they are actually on offer for £13 at the moment on Amazon. I'll put a link where I got them from below. I had a quick browse online just to see how much they charge individually, and it looks like they range from about £2.50 to £4 each, depending where you get them from. I struggled to actually find out how many colours there is overall, but I watched someone else's video and they mentioned that they think there's about 60 colours in total, if you wanted the full range. I also looked into whether you can refill these markers. As we talked about earlier, you can unscrew the cap, you can refill them, because you can buy little 30ml pots of the Ecoline watercolour basically. I didn't find many websites that sold them, but they seem to range all the way from about £3.50 all the way up to £6 for a pot. They also had some in sets, so they might work out a bit cheaper. As for the nibs on these, they're actually quite firm. So compared to using like a paintbrush, I would say you can get much more detail with these. Personally, I think that's a really good thing. But I guess depending on how you work with watercolours, you could argue that's personal preference. So I think I will leave it at there. Hopefully I've covered most things. If there's anything that I have missed, just ask it in the comments below and I will do my best to answer those. I'll also upload a slightly slower version of this where I include the sketching and the line art, where I actually talk about the process, as this one is more of an overview of the brush pens themselves. So my closing thoughts, do I like these markers? Are they good? Honestly, they do seem good, but I struggled with them more than I expected, and it brought up a bit more of the paper than I thought as well. I'd just say they were a bit more difficult to use, but again, that could be down to my skill level, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you use these. I didn't really see as much difference between these and using like alcohol Copic markers type things as I was expecting. So my feelings on these are pretty neutral. They seem good, hopefully I will get better with them, but they didn't stand out to me. I wasn't blown away by the product or anything like that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. If you did enjoy this video or find it useful, make sure you leave me a comment below. Let me know what other videos you guys want to see next. Also, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and be sure to turn notifications on and subscribe for future content. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.